Uh, Today's Rambam discusses three mitzvot of the Torah, which are spoken about in Parshat Kedoshim. The Rambam at the beginning of the laws of Deot, the laws of moral conduct. The Rambam said that there are 10 mitzvot of the Torah included in these section of laws. And today, the Rambam will discuss three of those. These are going to be very famous mitzvot, including the mitzvah of Lashon Hara, which everybody is very familiar with. And let's just look at which mitzvot are going to be included today. So the first one is here in Parshat Kedoshim. The pasuk says, "Lo telech rachil ba'amecha," don't be a gossiper in your nation. And the pasuk says, "Lo ta'amod al dam reyecha," don't stand by the blood of your friend. And the Rambam will discuss this juxtaposition of the Pesukim. Why is gossiping put together with standing idly by your friend's blood? The second mitzvah, which is going to be discussed in today's Chumash, in today's Rambam, the second and third will be the mitzvah of not taking revenge, which follows two Pesukim later, Lo tikom ve'lo titor et bnei amecha. Okay, so that's the topics for today's mitzvot in the Rambam, and obviously of great significance. Okay, so Hamaragil b'chaveiro, the Rambam says someone who gossips about his friend. Over belota say he transgresses a prohibition, as it says, "Lo telech rachil ba'amecha," do not go around gossiping among your people. So a person is prohibited from gossiping. V'afal pi she'en lokin al davar zeh, even though a person doesn't get lashes for transgressing this prohibition, because most times a person is punished for transgressing a prohibition with lashes. Over here, he doesn't get lashes because there's no particular action involved. It's just words. Avon gadolhu, it's a great sin. V'gorim la'arog nefashot miYisrael, and it actually causes many people to be killed. Lekach nismach lo v'lo talmod adam reyecha. That's what the pasuk. Therefore, the warning, do not stand still over your neighbor's blood, is placed next to it in the Torah. See what happened because of Doeg the Edomat. So here we learn that when a person actually does be a gossiper, it's considered a great sin, and it can cause many people to be killed. The Rambam gives us a story to illustrate it, and that's the story of Doeg. Doeg was the head of the Bet Din in the days of King Shaul. However, he isn't recorded in the Mishnah as someone of great praise. In fact, the opposite. And the reason is because he was very jealous of David HaMelech, and way before David became a king, he gossiped about David to Shaul regarding how the high priest had given David food. And as a result, the entire city of Nov, of priests, had been killed. So we see over here how gossiping brings to bloodshed. And the Rambam says, therefore, a person must be so careful with his words, not to gossip. Ezehu Rachil, who is a gossiper? One who collects information and then goes from person to person saying, this is what so and so said. This is what I heard about so and so. Even if the statements are true, they bring about the destruction of the world. Okay, so this is what a gossiper, when a person is just like a yenta, okay, go about carrying information about people. That's what it means, a rachil. There is a much more serious sin than gossip, which is also included in this prohibition, lashon hara, i.e. relating, deprecating, I don't know how to say that word properly actually, if anyone knows, please unmute yourself and let me know, facts about a colleague, even if they are true. So lashon hara is a subdivision of being a rachil, a gossiper. It isn't a sin independently, it's a subdivision of a gossiper. And it's particularly someone who's saying things which are not positive about somebody else. Okay, so he doesn't just say information about other people, but it's somebody who says, like negative things about somebody else. Lashon hara does not refer to the invention of lies. That is referred to as defamation of character. Rather, one who speaks Lashon hara is someone who sits and relates. This is what so and so has done. His parents were such and such. This is what I have heard about him. Telling uncomplimentary things. Concerning this transgression, the verse states, may God cut off all guileful lips, the tongues which speak proud things. So here the Rambam has taught us of three kinds of chatterboxes. The first is known as a gossiper, who just shares information about people, not necessarily bad information, just stuff about people from one person to the next person. That itself is a sin. A person may say, what's he doing already? He's just chatting. But that itself is a sin, and it can cause terrible things to happen.
Has everybody lost the rabbi? Or is it just me?
I've also lost him.
Me as well. He's frozen.
What's it going to do with us?
I'm sure he's trying to reconnect.
Sorry about that. There was a bit of a technical glitch over there. Okay, so we were speaking about three ways that a person could speak about other people. One is to be a gossiper, which is just carrying information about one person to the next. The second is to share something negative about somebody, and that's called a lashon hara. And the third is to say something which is actually not true, which is a lie. And that's a third category. It's called motzi shemra, which isn't included in the mitzvot that we're learning, or it's actually negative about the other person, and that's what's called lashon hara.
We can't hear you, Rabbi.
You've frozen again.
Sorry once again. Okay, looks like I'm not going to be able to get the screen sharing, so we'll just do it with dictating. Sorry about this. Okay, now the idea of not speaking badly about somebody else is obviously in the negative, but there's also a positive spin to it, and that is to speak positively about people. Okay, so these are the negatives of the idea of Lashon Hara. Is the flip side of Ahavat Yisrael. So when a person loves another fellow, obviously he doesn't want to talk badly about him, or he doesn't want to even be a gossiper about him. So the idea of loving a fellow Jew is the opposite of speaking badly or just gossiping about another person. So obviously when coming to bring Mashiach, we're looking forward to rebuilding the Bet HaMikdash. One of the things we could do is improving in our Ahavat Yisrael. Okay. Our sages said that there are 3 sins for which retribution is exacted from a person in this world, and for which he is nonetheless denied a portion in the world to come. They are idol worship, forbidden relationships, and murder. Lashon hara is equivalent to all of them. Our sages also said, anyone who speaks Lashon hara is like one who denies God. As it says, those who said with our tongues we will prevail, our lips are our own. Who is the Lord over us? In addition, they said, Lashon hara kills 3 people, the one who speaks about it, the one who speaks it, the one who listens to it, and the one about whom it is spoken. The one who listens to it suffers more than the one who speaks it. So in this law, the Rambam tells us 3 things. Lashon hara is considered more serious, is equivalent to idol worship, forbidden relationships, and murder. Secondly, Lashon hara is like one who denies God. Thirdly, Lashon hara kills 3 people, the one who speaks it, the one who listens to it, and the one who it's spoken about. And here the Rambam tells us that even if a person is just listening and he's actually not saying it, he's considered worse than the one who's sharing. There are certain matters which are considered the dust of Lashon hara. What is implied? For example, a person says, who will tell so-and-so to continue acting as he does now? Or, do not talk about so-and-so. I do not want to say what happened, or the like. So there is a way of speaking Lashon hara, which isn't directly Lashon hara, but it's called dust of Lashon hara. And that is when you don't clearly speak badly about somebody, but you kind of imply it. Similarly, it is also considered the dust of Lashon hara when someone speaks favorably about a colleague in the presence of his enemies, for this will surely prompt them to speak disparagingly about him. In this regard, King Solomon said, one who greets his colleague early in the morning in a loud voice curses him, for his positive act will bring him negative repercussions. So sometimes even speaking positively about somebody, but in the wrong company, could be considered Lashon hara, because as a result of you bringing up the person's good qualities, you're arousing the listener to bring up his negative qualities. Similarly, to be condemned is a person who relates Lashon hara in frivolity and jest, as if he were not speaking with hatred. This was also mentioned by Solomon in his wisdom as a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death, and says, I am only joking. So when a person speaks Lashon hara merely in jest, he's like as if he's doing nothing, but really he's throwing arrows and he's just saying, I'm joking. Okay, so this also is implied in the teachings of Solomon. Also to be condemned is someone who speaks Lashon hara about a colleague slyly, pretending to be innocently telling a story without knowing that it is harmful. When he is reproved, he excuses himself by saying, I did not know that the story was harmful or that so-and-so was involved. Okay, so this is three kinds of areas of Lashon hara, which aren't directly Lashon hara, but they include either dust, they're like in the dust of Lashon hara, and that is implying something negative, talking positively, speaking in jest, realize there's anything wrong. There is no difference when one speaks Lashon hara about a person in his presence or behind his back. The statements of people who relate matters which, when passed from one person to another, will cause harm to a man's person or to his property, or will even merely annoy him or frighten him, are considered Lashon hara. If such statements were made in the presence of 3 people, one may assume that the matter has already become public knowledge. Thus, if one of the 3 relates the matter a second time, it is not considered Lashon hara, provided his intention was not to spread the matter further and publicize it. So this is a very, very interesting law where the Rambam kind of gives us an area when one is able to share the information without having violated the prohibition of Lashon Hara. And that is if it became public news already. And when is that? When 3 people have already been shared the information. By that point, it's considered public knowledge, and it may be passed on, but with one condition, that the person who's telling it over does not mean to spread the matter further or to publicize it. So even if it's a public event and people know about it, if the person telling over about it is saying it in order to publicize it further, that is still considered Lashon Hara. It's only not Lashon Hara when one is saying it without that intention. Okay, so these are interesting laws. There are many, many, many laws about Lashon Hara. Famously, they are recorded in the Chofetz Chaim, the laws of the Chofetz Chaim, who wrote a book all about Lashon Hara in all its particulars. There are many, many details about Lashon Hara which one must be particular about. The general rule is if a person loves his fellow, he will be almost saved from any type of Lashon Hara because he won't want to talk in any way badly about somebody he loves. So therefore, a lot of our efforts should be to increase our love for others, and automatically we'll be saved from this terrible prohibition of Lashon Hara. Number 6, all of the above are people who speak Lashon Hara in whose neighborhood one is forbidden to dwell. How much more so it is forbidden to sit together with them and hear their conversation. So here you have a situation where a person's friendly with people who speak Lashon Hara. The Rambam says you can't even live in their neighborhood, and you certainly cannot sit in their company. The judgment against our ancestors in the desert was only because of Lashon Hara. The Jews spent 40 years.
Rabbi Warburg, I've made you once again the host if you'd like to screen share.
Oh, thank you. They spent 40 years traveling in the desert only because the spies spoke disparagingly about the land of Israel. Okay, this concludes the laws of Rachel, a gossiper, and its subdivision called Lashon Hara. The next few laws will discuss a new prohibition, which is called taking revenge. A nokem, a person who takes revenge against a colleague, transgresses a Torah prohibition as states do not take revenge. Now, even though revenge is not punished by lashes, it is a very bad trait. There's no particular action involved in revenge, and therefore there's no lashes, but it's still a very bad trait. Instead, a person should train himself to rise above his feelings and about all worldly things. For men of understanding, consider all these things as vanity and emptiness, which are not worth seeking revenge for. And this is a fascinating thing the Rambam does over here. The Rambam actually gives us a method in order that we shouldn't take revenge. Now, obviously, the simple method is love your fellow and therefore don't take revenge. But sometimes that's difficult for a person who has been harmed by another person. You know, the person's been harmed by somebody. It's difficult to say love him and therefore don't take revenge. The Rambam has discussed that kind of attitude in a Talmid Chacham's behavior. But over here, the Rambam says to us, even for a person who's not holding there, he still should train himself not to be so concerned about what he was wronged about, because all worldly matters are ultimately vanity. But what is meant by taking revenge? A person's colleague asked him, "Lend me your hatchet." He responds, "I refuse to lend it to you." On the following day, the person who refused needs to borrow. The latter responds, "Just as you did not lend it to me, I will not lend it to you." This is considered as taking revenge. Instead, when he comes to ask him for it, he should give it to him with a full heart. What that tells us, what does it mean not to take revenge? Not to say, definitely not to say, I'm not going to give it to you just like you didn't give it to me. And not just to give it to him, but he should give it to him with a full heart, without repaying him for what wronged him about. The same applies in other instances. Thus, in other similar instances, have I repaid those who hated me without cause. King David had many, many enemies. Throughout the entire Tehillim, he almost complains to Hashem about the many enemies that he has. But David says, I never repaid my enemies. So if a person's chopping meat and he mistakenly chops off some fingers on Number 8, similarly, anyone who holds a grudge against another Jew violates a Torah prohibition, as it states, do not bear a grudge against the children of your people. What is meant by bearing a grudge? Reuven asked Shimon, rent this house to me, or lend this ox to me, and Shimon was not willing to do so. A few days later, Shimon came to borrow or rent something from him. Reuven told him, here it is, I'm lending it to you, and I'm not like you, nor am I paying you back for what you did. So harboring a grudge is when a person says to the other, you wronged me, and I'm not going to be like you. I'm actually going to be doing the right thing. So in this way, he's harboring a grudge against the other person's behavior. So he's not taking revenge, but he's harboring a grudge. A person who acts in this manner violates the prohibition against bearing a grudge. Instead of doing so, he should wipe the matter from his heart and never bring it to mind. As long as he brings the matter to mind and remembers it, there is a possibility that he will seek revenge. Therefore, the Torah condemned holding a grudge, requiring one to wipe the wrong from his heart entirely without remembering it at all. This is a proper quality which permits a stable environment, trade, and commerce to be established amongst people. Okay, so the Rambam in today's Rambam has told us 3 critical laws for the health of a society. Number 1, not to be a gossiper, with a subdivision of not to speak Lashon Hara. Number 2, not to take revenge. And number 3, not to harbor a grudge, which means even if a person is not taking revenge, a person shouldn't even remember the wrong of the other, because then he may come to take revenge. He should wipe it away from his heart entirely. Just to finish off with a very interesting statement of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe in the book of Tanya, chapter 12, teaches us that the mind is able to dominate one's feelings in his heart to the extent that not only will he want to take revenge, he'll actually want to do good to his fellow who wronged him. And this is the example that the Alter Rebbe brings, is like Yosef. Yosef's brothers sold him into slavery. But when Yosef was in the position of power, not only did he not wrong his brothers, he was actually kind to them. So this is an exemplary kind of behavior. Not only should we not look to revenge each other, but actually look to give the avenger, or to give the person who wronged, to pay him back goodness. Okay, this is obviously a high level of quality, but it's a quality and a trait of Jewish people. And we should always look to improve our character trait. This is ultimately everything a person was created for, to improve his character trait. And in this case, not to be a gossiper, not to take revenge, and not to harbor a grudge. Does anybody have any questions before we close?
Rabbi, could I ask a question, please?
Go for it.
I don't know if my understanding is incorrect, but I thought that Lashon Hara, the particularly Lashon Hara, is by definition something which is true. And if you say something which is a falsehood, I think it's called Motzi Shemra. There's other terminology which is used.
That what you said is correct. The only difference between a gossiper and a Lashon Hara is a gossiper is someone who says something which is maybe positive. It's just that he's just carrying people's information around. Lashon Hara is when a person shares something truthful but derogatory about somebody else. That would be the category of Lashon Hara. If it's a lie about the other person, that's what's called the Motzi Shemra, as you said.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Okay, pleasure. Anyone else? Okay, so thanks everybody for joining. Have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos. And please God, we'll see you in the coming week. Pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good Shabbos to everyone.
Good Shabbos, all the best.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yes.
Yeah.